Hello and welcome to 209 Prep Sports Media. We will utilize this podcast and various social media sites to share information, highlight weekly matchups, promote the talent of the 209, and most of all, create a platform for our athletes. In an era dominated by social media and internet, we've also lost print media and the writers who love writing about prep sports. Some of them have their own social media accounts where they freelance and cover sports. Some are writing for a few newspapers still covering prep sports. And we hope to have some of these writers on as weekly guests to share their insights, thoughts, and ideals about the various hot topics of the week. Hello and welcome back to 209 Prep Sports Media. We're back in the studio, Scott and I, this week. Everything's kind of fast and furious at this point. New news today, indoor sports, volleyball, wrestling, basketball, all got approved to play. So I'm sure all the athletic directors and coaches in the area are now scrambling to put together a schedule, much like football and the like has done for the last couple of weeks. So it's exciting that our state finally has their act together and given our kids a chance to kind of get some normalcy back in their lives and things like that. But the real work starts now. Football, water polo, wrestling, now basketball and volleyball will all have to test weekly as long as you have a case rate between 7 and 14 per 100,000. So that's one hurdle that everybody has to have, and then all the sports are going to require a COVID waiver. So all the schools are working on getting their legal teams put together the waiver, and everybody's working on their whatever. There's multiple sites or multiple companies that do the testing. So that's kind of where we're at. With the new news of today, it's exciting. Scott and I have kind of in the evolution of this, we're working on our website and we got an interview today. And so I guess we'll kind of just go from there.
Yeah. This is, like I expressed to you offline, I'm so excited about this. It's like we're getting a chance to let the kids do what they've been training for and preparing for so long. And we'll go over some of the schedules of some of the local football teams here in just a little bit. But, the news today where other sports are getting to start, it's going to be an interesting time. We're entering into a part of the season where, we would be just starting spring sports, the softball, the baseball, track and field and all that. But now we're going to cram a whole year's worth of athletics into 1 year. And you're going to see from the football schedules, it's an abbreviated season. But at the same time, it's going to still be fun to see what the outcomes are of some of these games. I'll go over the schedules here in just a sec, but I'm looking at some of the matchups and, the teams that are going to take the field and play each other on some of these dates. I know, for just a high school fan like myself, I probably won't be able to attend any of these games, but it's still going to be able, if they're going to be live streaming these, whatever service that you might have, it's still going to be exciting to see some of these matchups.
Yeah, I think that's still the question of the day is trying to figure out who's going to be able to attend, how many people are going to be allowed, those types of things, and I think depending on what your county is and. I've heard, a bunch of stories about how things are going, and you see not a lot of schools, but a good amount of schools are choosing not to play football, not to play particular sports. And now with this new announcement today, and it's literally hot off the press, I think it happened like in the last couple hours. I believe Newsom had a press conference around 10 that and announced they had an agreement to allow those indoor sports back in. So. And, we're in March. And getting a schedule together with all the, and small schools are going to probably be the ones that suffer. The ones that use two or three sport athletes are going to have an issue with having enough players to play all sports. So I don't know how that plays out. I would assume some schools will just choose to bypass even with the announcement, maybe wrestling and. I don't know if especially like I know our school in particular has most of the volleyball players play softball. So I don't know if they're going to allow them to do both or try to do both or what the situation is going to be.
Yeah. And the other element too, that a lot of people don't discuss at all is, is at the smaller level. Not only are the athletes multiple sport athletes, but the coaches are multiple sport coaches. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then not to mention, we talked about this before on this podcast, is the officials. How are they going to be able to provide enough officials for those that, I officiated for a while myself, and I can honestly say that, when I did football, most of the guys on my crew, I didn't do it, but most of the guys on my crew would transition into winter sports and do basketball, wrestling, whatever, and then they'd transition and do baseball, softball. So if all these sports are going to occur kind of very within proximity date-wise, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to approach that. And one of the solutions that we discussed previously is going from, a typical football crew for high school football is a 5-man crew. Well, maybe that goes to a 3-man crew just because, they don't have enough people. But I guess the flip side of that too is what you had just said. There's going to be less schools offering certain sports, so maybe that contributes to having enough officials. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many unknowns at this point. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think patience is we've preached it a little bit already in the previous few podcasts, but patience is a virtue, and it's going to be of the highest importance more than almost any other season, because of this isn't about, and it's not about records, and it's not about the scoreboard, and it's not about standings, because there's no sections, there's no playoffs. It's just getting the games in. It's getting competition in for the kids that are going to move on to the next level. It's getting them to have good film. It's just giving them an opportunity to regain some of what's been lost in this last year. And we get it, man. We're in a pandemic. I mean, we're at the back end of it. We're not done. It's not over, but there's at least a light at the end of the tunnel. We're a lot further along than we were a year ago.
For sure. And which, brings us up to the point. This is what the reason why we started this podcast was to promote area youth sports. And now we're finally going to get to do that. Yep. So, we went researching any way we could, came up with some of the schedules. So we're going to share some of that right now. A lot of it we got off of Twitter. From some of our, a lot of our local teams, and everyone's posting a 5-game season, which I think has been approved. And so, we'll start off with, for example, Manteca posted their schedule, and they're opening up on the 19th, like most teams. They're going to open up against Kimball. Then they play the following week against Ripon on the 26th of March. April 1st, crosstown rival Sierra, and then April 9th, Oakdale, Trent Merzon and his crew be playing Manteca, and then on the 16th they'll be playing East Union, another crosstown rival. And as we go through these, I think it's going to be interesting to point out that you're going to have a lot of non-traditional games too, and we'll cover that, Coach, when we cover talk about Lyndon here in just a few minutes. But, let's see here. Next up we'll cover Weston Ranch. They're going to open up at Sierra on the 19th. Pretty good matchup with Escalon on the 26th. And then April 1st, they're going to be playing Ripon at Ripon. And then the 9th, they'll be playing East Union. And then the 16th, they'll be playing Kimball. So that is the Western Ranch Cougars. Then we move on to Escalon and Coach Andrew Beam's crew. It looks like they've got Oakdale right off the bat. So that's going to be an interesting matchup there. Probably one that, if you know anything about, the history of San Joaquin Valley football, that's probably one where those two schools, because they're pretty much within proximity of each other, just down the highway, have probably wanted to play each other for a long time.
Oh yeah,
especially Oakdale and Escalon both have such a rich history of producing great football teams, and
Smash Mouth football.
Yeah,
it's Americana at its finest.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one. Again, if you've got the ability to live stream games, and I don't know where we're at on that, if the schools are going to be doing that, or If you're related to any of the players or get to go, that's one that's an early check mark on my schedule that I would love to see. Then next week, Escalon travels to Western Ranch, and April 2nd, they're playing Kimball. And then April 9th, another one that I would highlight that I would love to see, Ripon Escalon. That's just a historic battle. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Each team could be 0 and whatever when they're playing each other, which that doesn't happen between those schools, of course. But it's still going to be an epic game. Yeah. I mean, that is definitely in the Central Valley a game that if you're available, you want to go see. And then they round out their abbreviated season playing Sierra, which I will say that Sierra in recent years has really put some good football teams out.
There's a lot of talent in that area. That Sierra, Manteca, East Union, they stepped up their game quite a bit the last few years as well.
Absolutely. Manteca, the whole Manteca area has produced some really good football lately. We're going to switch over to Ripon. So you've already heard some of the dates for Ripon, of course, but they're opening up against East Union on the 19th, playing, that game, one of the games I like to highlight. March 26th, they're at Manteca. And then April 1st, they play Western Ranch. April 9th, they're at Escalon. We just talked about that. And then the 16th, they're playing Oakdale. So
another phenomenal game.
Yeah.
Probably not the rivalry that Escalon, but talent-wise, those teams match up really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's just, when you hear the Ripons, the Escalons, the Oakdales, you can even throw, obviously Manteca has had a lot of success over the last 10, 15 years. Now, like you said, in the Manteca area, throwing East Union and Sierra, you're going to get some quality games from those schools.
Yeah.
We were able to find Tokay's schedule, and again, remember, just keep in mind that these schedules are fluid, and you'll hear in an interview that we have here in a few minutes with a local coach, he reminded us of that. These schedules could change just depending on, the testing and the way those things go. So we've got Tokay. They open up at West. The first week on the 19th, then they play at home against Lincoln on the 26th, and then the Lyndon Lions travel to Tokay High School on the 2nd. Again, another non-traditional football game. I don't know that Lyndon and Tokay have ever played each other at the varsity level, so that'll be an interesting matchup. And then they're at Tracy on the 9th, and then their crosstown rival, the Lodi Flames, on April 16th, which is always a good game. Let's see here. Who do we got up next? Big Valley Christian, we were able to find their schedule. Let's see here. Big Valley opens up the 19th against Gustine. Then on March 22nd, they have a home game against the Lyndon Lions, which we'll hear more about here in just a sec. Then the Millennium Falcons, which always makes me chuckle when I hear that name. Yeah. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I get it. That's on April 1st. April 10th, they play Delta Charter, and then they close out their season on April 16th against the Delhi Hawks. So there you have it. Those are some of the schedules that we found. If people listening know of other schedules and can provide us some intel on that, we'd love to hear it. But I'll pass it over to you if you want to give us a quick rundown of the Lyndon Lions schedule for this year.
Yeah, so we had a little difficulty with it because Max Preps is usually your go-to source of information but it's just, I think with everything happening so quickly, it's been relatively difficult for everybody to try to get everything input, in a timely manner. So that's why we're kind of sporadic with what we have. But Lyndon, we'll go ahead and open against Lodi on the 19th, and then we play the next weekend against Big Valley Christian, and our JV actually will play Escalon at Escalon, and then we go to Tokay on April 2nd, and we just scheduled Sac High for April 9th, or April 10th, because we're playing on a Saturday that week. So we've got, for a D5-6 school, we're playing 3 D1 teams. So And that's probably, it's kind of like what you just mentioned a few minutes ago. Finding games was difficult, and so you kind of have to think outside the box and be willing to, to do what you have to do to get the games in, and you have to stay within proximity. Your county has to touch the other county. I talked to the Somerville coach yesterday because they have an opening and we can't play them. Our county doesn't touch their county, and they're in a really bad spot because their county touches 5 counties, but 3 of the counties don't have a high school. So it's like, it's difficult. And so, but it is what it is, and we're working within the confines of what we have. So we're doing the best we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Since we got you talking about your own team here, I'm going to kind of ask you a few more questions leading up to this season. Obviously it's been a challenge keeping any group focused for such a long period of time. You've been kind of punted around, and use that pun kind of loosely, but you've gotten to the point where you think you're on the cusp of having a season, then it's drawn back, and then you think you're there again, then it's drawn back. It's kind of like on again, off again. And so maybe share just a little bit of the challenges of keeping a group focused enough where now that we do have that green light, you have enough personnel and you've got a group of kids that are ready to play.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, like you said, it's, at one point we were expecting upwards of 70 players across the 2 levels, and probably, right after the pandemic, we had some opportunities to lift and stuff like that. So we had some guys interested, and we're probably mid to high 40s for a lot of that period. And then as we got later in the summer, we had a couple wildfire issues. So we had air quality issues. Then we had heat index
Right.
issues. Then we had coronavirus issues. I believe that we started and stopped 7 times through over the last year. So, like I said, you start in the mid 50s, and then by December, early January, we're down to the low 20s, almost into the teens with numbers wise. And so then you have a lot of questions about, how if we get a season, are we going to have the players to play? Has interest completely gone? And then we had, the Central Valley suffered through all of December and, November, December, January with high coronavirus numbers. So I'm sure parents were freaking out and didn't want their kids exposed and all that stuff. So we lost even more players. So, and now we're back and we're close to 40 again. So we've kind of started turning the corner, but with multiple sports, we have, 12 of our best athletes, or 12 of our good players that were playing for us that are now playing another sport. Yeah. So Escalon asked us to play a JV game. We were going to play them early. And we couldn't do it because they wanted a JV game. We just didn't have a JV team.
Sure.
And then it kind of matriculated over about a 3-day period where went from like 6 to 15, and now we've settled somewhere in the 16, 17 range. So
gotcha. Here's the fun part where we actually get to talk specific football. So my first question on that is maybe just to hit upon a couple of your athletes that are returning players that you're going to rely on over these next 5 games.
Yeah, so we're fortunate because we returned a lot of our team from last year. All of our line returns other than our center, which is good and bad. I mean, your center is your quarterback of the line, so it puts us in a little bit of a predicament. But collectively, I think of the 19 we have, all of them played last year, and were significant role players in what we did. We were young. We brought a bunch of sophomores on varsity last year. We only have 3 seniors, 1 lineman, and then our one of our best players is James Sherman, our running back slot. He'll probably play at the next level, really quick, shifty. And then our quarterback from last season transferred to St. Mary's, and so we're in a dual role there. So we got Alex Herrera and Joe Cowan will be our quarterbacks this season, and like I said, our line is pretty good. I mean, we have Raymond Clark and Andrew Captain on the left side, and then you have George Solorio and Abel Hurtado on the right side with Fernando Hernandez center. So, and then we have some really good defensive players, some young guys and things like that. So we're in I'm excited about what we have going. Obviously we're gonna the expectations are a little bit different. It's more like a spring scrimmage type of a year,
sure,
where you're just building for the fall. And trying to get the excitement back.
There any new faces that maybe keep an eye out for that even if they were on last year's team, that you think are going to be productive for this year's team?
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of starting sophomores, because when you have a sophomore, come up for you, they're not as mature as they might be talent-wise. And so as that maturation happens on the physical side of it, they become different. So they're more aggressive, they're stronger, faster. So we have some excitement with guys like Miles Flint and Brock Lund. That they did a really good job, Lucas Davis. And then we have a sophomore, Jacob Lantixi, kid's house. I mean, he's all of 230 and he's like 6'1" as a sophomore. So it's good weight. So he's a good, strong kid. And then we have, Jack McCann as another sophomore. So Joe Cowan, Jack McCann, and Jacob Lantixi are sophomores that are going to be big for us this year.
Oh, that's great. Well, I appreciate the insight of that. And it's always exciting to talk about individual players and what we're going to see from them in the future. I had the opportunity, to chat with Coach Franks from St. Mary's this week. He's a coach that's been at St. Mary's for an awfully long time. I want to say better part of 20 years, if not longer, and definitely a class act as a coach. And this is the interview that he had with me this week. I'm here with Coach Franks of the St. Mary's Rams in Stockton, California. Coach, thanks for taking the time to do this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate you coming down.
Absolutely. We're super excited that you guys finally get to play some football. Not quite the spring football that you're accustomed to from your days of coaching in college, but nonetheless, it's exciting that you get to play. I guess the first question that I have for you is, with the season being abbreviated, being moved to the spring, and then all the things that you've been going through, whether the season was on, the season was off, and so forth, what are some of the challenges associated with that, and how have you overcome those?
Well, some of the challenges are just getting things done that have to be done this time of year to pull a football season together. Which then it doesn't really matter if it's 4 games or 5 games or 6 games or 16 games. It's still a football season, and and certain things have to be done, and so there's an element of ramping up, and getting ready for that. So there's a lot to do, but there's also, this has been really, in a lot of ways, I guess the silver lining on this cloud is I've gotten to know this group of young men probably better than I have ever gotten to know any group we've ever had here, because we spent so much time together. We're going to look back on this and realize that we've spent an entire year, almost a full. We're going to finish in mid-April, and our seniors are going to graduate at the end of May. So we're about maybe 6 weeks short of being together the entire school year. Every day out there working out, doing the things that we do, and it's. I think it's really forged some really long-lasting relationships with this group of guys and with this group of young men. So I appreciate the time to be able to do that, and that part of it's been good.
Yeah, that's an incredible perspective that I think most people don't realize, that you are spending so much time with this group. With that said, going into this season, you've got a shortened season. Maybe give us a quick rundown of your schedule for what you're going to do over the next 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, classic question. I've been asked that a lot, and it is so tricky to nail down a definitive answer, because this is such an ever-changing world. And I keep telling my staff, I say, hey, the staff wants to know, hey, we're gonna, what's our schedule look like? How we got to get some game film. We got to start breaking down. I said, hey, fellas, you got to understand, we could lose a game on a Wednesday and have to pick up another game on a Wednesday evening or Thursday that we're going to go out and play on Friday. I was talking to a friend of mine that coaches up at the University of Washington, and he was saying they were literally on the bus to a game, and the game got canceled. On the way to the game. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit tricky in that way. I think we're planning on opening the season down at De La Salle. We've got a great relationship with those guys and have played them in the past, and looking forward to that challenge. And there's some league games in there that have been thrown in. It looks like we're going to play Jesuit out of Sacramento after we play De La Salle. So we'll be up there on a Saturday playing Jesuit. That's on the schedule anyway.
Yeah.
And maybe and possibly it's interesting because we've got some challenges with Easter week.
Oh wow.
We don't do as Catholics, we don't do anything on Good Friday.
Yeah.
And so that game that's scheduled Easter week has to be rescheduled either to a Thursday and so we'll see what happens there. That we might play Central Catholic that week.
Oh wow.
And have that kind of be a Holy Bowl during Holy Week.
There you go.
Maybe played on Holy Thursday. So that stuff might be interesting. But that's about as in stone as it can get for right now.
Right.
That it's still such a, my gosh, that first game seems like months away, and there's so much for us to do, and so many things that can happen between now and then that it's just tough to tell at this point.
It's interesting to hear you talk about that. Never would one think that Easter would be a consideration during a football season.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
usually it's Thanksgiving, or if you're lucky enough to make it to a state bowl, preparing for a winter break or something like that. So absolutely. So with that said, I mean, you guys are ramping up to not take things slowly this year. Apparently, if you're going to start off with De La Salle, very storied program as you guys are. Jesuit obviously is a very good program, and Central Catholic as well. So those are three heavy hitters that you're putting on the schedule right there. With that said, obviously you're going to rely on some key returning players. Maybe discuss a couple of the key returners that you have coming in this season.
Well, I think this year is about the seniors, and so our senior class, and we kind of changed the way we are practicing now, so that we can get our seniors as many reps on either side of the ball. And I was talking with Max Rascon the other day, and Max is a returning starter at middle linebacker for us and a senior, and has just been doing such a great job. This is just an example of one young man that and our approach to this. I said, Max, hey, you've just been playing linebacker. How about, and this is, I don't know how many games we're going to get this spring. We may only play one game. We may play two. It may be four. I don't know. We want to make the most of every snap that we get. So why don't you go play some offense too? So he's going to jump in and get some reps at guard, and he's going to play linebacker and guard. So guys like Max and Anthony Enos is going to be a senior defensive end, and he'll play some offensive line for us. And Tyree Washington is going to carry a heavy load for us, as well as pretty much every other senior on our roster. It's just Matt Cushman, our big lineman, is going to have to. He kind of fancies himself as just an offensive lineman, which he is, and he's a terrific one. But he's got to play D-line too, because he just needs to play football, right? He's got to play as many snaps as he can. So. We're going to kind of put it on our senior class to go out and have some fun this spring and play as much football as their bodies will allow, and we'll drag them off the field at the end of the game and celebrate on the way home. So
that's awesome. How about any new faces to the varsity program this year that you are going to kind of rely on?
Yeah, well, it's good to have Cruz Herrera out there. Yeah, Cruz has been a great addition at the quarterback position. We have what I feel is a strong junior class. We actually started last year, but it was actually 2019 when we last played. So about a year and a half ago, we had five sophomores that started for us on that team that made it into the playoffs and was involved in that. And so all those young men are now juniors for this spring. And are gonna, they're gonna make a significant impact on all of them are gonna make a significant impact on our team in these spring games, as well as next fall season when they become seniors and maybe go out and make up for a little bit of lost time that we got this year. So
yeah, I guess that's one way to handle it. Much like in college, you have a spring football schedule that you go through. This is, I guess, would be kind of comparable to that, throwing in a few games as well, but.
Yeah. The difference is in a traditional spring, you don't worry about. All you worry about is coaching your guys, right?
Yeah.
And now we have to worry about playing some football games and who's going to do it, and that's why we kind of put that emphasis on. We felt it was important to put the emphasis on the seniors, and it's been such a tough year for all students, for everyone. Absolutely. Really. Absolutely. But seniors in high school this year, boy, what a tough go they had. I really think by next year things will normalize, and I think our current juniors will have a very traditional looking football season next fall. So they'll miss a year, but they'll get a chance to make up for it next year, and so our seniors won't. So they got to make the most of every rep.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully, I guess the hope would be that the seniors this year that are going to move on to play college football, this will help them when they arrive in the fall for their respective schools.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get them. We're going to work hard, get them ramped up, and get them ready to go.
Yeah, perfect. Kind of the last thing I want to talk about is, we're sitting here and I see your coaches in there preparing for practice. I don't think a lot of people understand the toll it's taken on you as coaches that have had to take what is traditionally a fall schedule and, like you said, stretch it out over the whole year. So, do you have anything to say about your coaches and the input that they've had into preparing the season?
Well, everyone has just been outstanding with this thing. The amount of time and effort and energy that they've given, it's just an indication that they do it for the love of doing it. They do it because they love these young men, and they value the time spent with them. And they'll come out here and do it all year long if we let them, And we proved that this year. Typically we don't have to do that. We're done. We're done before Christmas at some point. Hopefully not too much before Christmas, but we're done before Christmas, and we know when we're home at Christmas break that we're gonna, be able to pull the plug out for a little while and kind of recharge the batteries and get the off season going, but. It wasn't like that this year. We just kept feeling like we needed to get a football team ready to go. We didn't know when that go was going to be, if it was going to be at all, and we still don't. But we felt like we were obligated to give it everything we had, and to get out here and and do the best we could. And so our staff did that. They're incredible. It's a phenomenal staff. We've been together for almost 20 years now, wow. and loving every minute of it. And our team is. Stayed together, they really have. Our participation numbers are still high, and it's good. It's good in that way. So excited about it.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for doing this. St. Mary's has a rich history of quality football and also producing some quality players that have moved on to the next couple of levels, and we anticipate this will be no different. So thanks for doing this, Coach. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Phenomenal. I love the guy's voice. I'm fortunate. My son plays quarterback for him, so I get to be on Zoom meetings and hear the voice. And the voice is like it's a radio voice.
Yeah. Well, are you saying that he has a face for radio? I'll be sure to pass that on next time I see him. Hey, one thing about that, there was a lot of background noise during the interview, and we were both wearing masks, so we were adhering to the policies. But that was just an example of him multitasking. He was running a weight lift, had his whole team in the weight room lifting, and you notice it was a lot of weights clanking and not a lot of talking. So they keep those kids pretty focused, and really appreciate Coach Franks and his time, and best of luck to St. Mary's this season. And our goal is to speak to some of the other area coaches and really get a kind of a flavor of what their programs are going through and what they anticipate from this season as well. But I do want to kind of hit on one thing that he talked about, in particular to a certain player, that I think this is going to be one of the casualties of the way these seasons are playing out. Max Rascon, I'm very familiar with him. I've gotten a chance to watch him on the wrestling team over the last couple of years, and Coach Randy Holberg at St. Mary's has done an outstanding job with this young man. He's an incredible kid that is obviously a very good football player, but I got to see him on the wrestling mat, and he's an extremely coachable kid, and it's just going to be disappointing if he, if because of the way the schedules dictate, he's not able to have a wrestling season, because it's been really fun to watch him and many others, of course.
Sure. But
he sets an example of somebody that might not get the full experience he was anticipating his senior year.
Well, and I think listening to Coach Frank speak about, the dynamics of how the season's going to work, and we've all seen it, like you said, it's been a year. I mean, we've all, went to practice and lifted when we could and did the things we did. without any without knowing. I mean, it was like a wing and a prayer type of a thing. You're just hoping it's going to happen, but you're going to do what you need to do to prepare. And, as coaches, you're as familiar as anybody, you never feel like you're prepared enough. You always, you get down to, you could bust your butt and everything could, be perfect, but you still don't feel like you're ready, and now you're in a situation where nobody's going to be ready. I mean, to be honest, I think physically we'll be okay, physically ready. The kids will be, but, having, plays cleaned up, having everything designed the way you want, so you can, and proper preparation is, watching hours and hours and hours of film, and preparing for what you think the other team's weaknesses are and what your strengths are and where you can expose their weaknesses and things like that. We just don't have that time this year, so this year is going to be much more. I almost would equate it to backyard football. We'll probably be drawing up plays in the dirt at some point, trying to see what happens and how we make it work.
I think you're right because, he in that interview, he brought up a really valid point that this is a fluid season. At any given moment that your season could change. So for example, as I look here, Manteca, for example, their first game is Kimball. So right now when those guys go to practice every day, they're preparing to play Kimball. Well, if Kimball cancels on Wednesday night and they scramble and find another game on Wednesday, they've got one day to prepare for this new team. And it goes right back to your point, is like you're almost going to have to draw plays in the sand because maybe Kimball, and I don't know what type of offense they run, but maybe they're a pro set type of offense. And then you reschedule, and now you're playing a team that runs a Delaware wing tee. Yeah. So it's like, oh, oops, guys. Yeah. All that stuff we did for last week, forget about it. This is what we're going to see Friday night. So it's good. It's going to be interesting to see, how this plays out, and hopefully those types of situations don't occur. We want to see
they will. They will. But the beauty of when they do happen is it doesn't end it all for everybody. We're going to have a school or a couple schools that have a positive test and cannot play. I mean, that's where we're at right now. It's so finite. Like you get one positive test and now you're in a cohort. It pretty much effectively it shuts down the whole program for that 10 days.
Yeah.
And if it happens at the wrong time, it effectively could end your season. But the kids are willing to take that risk, not the risk to get sick. I'm not saying that, but we're willing to take the risk of possibly losing a game as opposed to not ever having a game in the first place. Yeah. You have to make some concessions to where we're at, in our lives as a society, but we also have to understand that, hey, this is bigger than football. I mean, you're seeing guys that are hardened, because coaches are kind of brash and cocky and, and not I'm not any particular coach, but coaches in general. And it's probably not fair to make that statement, but it's true, and all of us have an ego. But for the first time, I think coaches are humanized. They're kind of taking a step back and realizing, hey, it's bigger. Not that we all coach because we love the kids. We all coach because we want what's best for the kids. But
it's not the money.
It's not the money. but we also do want to, we're competitive. At some point in our lives, we were competitive. We want to win. Nobody coaches to lose.
Right.
Now, some people go to the extreme, but some people go to the extreme the other way.
Yeah, and and I agree with you on that. But those types of coaches are far and in between. Sure. I mean, most of the coaches that we see in our areas, I would say there's some really quality people out there coaching these programs, and not just football, but
all sports.
But all sports, and there's no doubt if we were in Texas, maybe the conversation's a little bit different because when you're the football coach at a top school there and you're making 100,000, then the money plays into
50,000 people in a high school football stadium.
But if I took any coach in this area and divided what they get paid over the amount of time that they spend, every coach in this area is losing money.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's for the love of the game. I honestly believe that because I coached myself for a long time, and
it's about they do love the kids. I didn't mean to say that they didn't, but I think there's this new found affinity for why we do it. Because my dad used to always tell me when I was a kid, you don't miss what you don't have. Yeah. And so had we never had sports or whatever, we would have never missed it. But because you had it and it's taken away, it changes things. And there's this desire to have the social aspect of it. There's this desire to be a part of a family. There's this desire to be a part of the competition. There's this desire of having some potential to get your name in the paper or whatever it may be. Everybody's driven differently. But for the first time, and I think the kids too, like I'm not dealing with attitude anymore. Right. You know, I'm not dealing with a kid that's thinks he's above it all or better than it all, you know, and that may come back. Yeah. I mean, we're humans. So we're going to, those, the way we've acted in the past, we'll probably get back there. But for now, it's just a different approach. I mean, I'm talking to coaches where, like I said, we've stepped up our schedule and we're playing teams that are way above our pay grade.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
You know, as we kind of wind down today's podcast, I just want to throw it out there that, you know, if anybody has some more, or anyone has access to schedules, or they know some of the other local teams that are playing, and not just football, we want to hear about all the sports. We want to promote all of the prep sports in the 209. So, you know, we'd love to have some feedback. You know, I think we're pretty close to finishing off our new website, and I'll let you kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, and we just be careful with what we're trying to get done. We've got think about, you know, having a high school and how many sports they're going to be playing all at the same time, and now add 50 or 60 high schools, and for us to cover all of them is going to be very, very difficult. Now, it's some exciting things have already happened. A bunch of cross country matches have already happened, which are phenomenal. You know, there's
for sure.
across the area, swim meets are happening regularly. I believe some tennis matches have happened as well. Golf matches have happened as well. So there are some good things really going. It's very difficult to cover those sports because they're not allowing fans in, and B, nobody's posting anything on a schedule where we would know how to even go about tracking that. Mm-hmm. So our hope is, as the evolution of this happens, you know, we'll have our email address and those things. Hopefully schools will start to send us their schedule so we can be more adept at being able to cover those sports, because that becomes a difficult part. We don't know that they're happening. That's the first and foremost. And then after that, to not be able to be in that particular place becomes somewhat difficult to cover a sport you can't even watch. Yeah. So, but yeah, so the website's in the developmental stages, but we're very close. We have an email address. It's info@prepsports209.com. Again, and you can always reach us at on Facebook at 209 Prep Sports and Twitter at 209 Prep. You can email us at on our Yahoo account as well, prepsports209@yahoo.com. Yeah. So we have a lot, you know, that we're doing to try to get this going. I think we'd have been a much better place had the seasons not been delayed.
Yeah.
You know, so we got delayed as well, you know, and tried to keep everybody abreast with all the information that was going on and everything that's happening. And it's constantly, like Coach said, it's a constantly evolving. It's going to be a fluid situation where patience is going to be very, very important. We're going to have to do things that are different. Like, for instance, for busing, we're not going to bus. So we have to drive our kids to games, you know, and some schools, you know, it becomes difficult. You don't want to be the school that says you can't have people in your stands. Well, I just made it easy. I'm not going to host any games, and I'll put it on everybody else. Yeah. I mean, and and that's not ideal, but when you're traveling twice to Stockton, once to Modesto, and once to Sacramento, it's really not that big a deal.
Right.
I mean, Absolutely. It's a 15-minute drive, 30-minute drive. So other than the SAC trip, but man, it's great. It's exciting. You know, I think it's exciting for all sports now that everybody has the opportunity. Hopefully, you know, it works out for everybody. Like we talked about, we're going to have an issue with umpires. We're going to have an issue with referees. We're going to have issues with COVID. We're going to have issues with transportation. You're going to have issues across the board. But remember what you didn't have for the last year. Anytime you get pissed, upset, frustrated, whatever, just think about what you haven't had for the last 360 something days, you know, and remember that it could be worse, you know, and so we're in a good spot where, you know, thank God, you know, the numbers have started to change. Things are getting better. That's good for everybody, you know, but now our kids' mental health can get better. Our kids' physical health can get better. I've seen a lot of kids gain weight, you know, that because they just didn't have anything to do. Myself, you know, included. So it's just like, it is what it is. We are where we are. And now we're turning the corner, you know, let's turn the corner together. Let's row the boat in the same direction. Let's be super positive about this. We'll tag every single high school I can think of that I can get a hold of on Twitter this time with this post, so everybody knows who we are, and that'll, it's going to be a lot. But as we get that following and that traction, if you are a listener, make sure your high school is reaching out to us and sharing information with us, because I know, like, for instance, Jonah Coleman signed this week, or committed this week to Arizona at Lincoln, and he had six Power 5 offers that he narrowed it down to, and he chose to go with Arizona. So that's phenomenal.
Good for him. That's awesome.
Local kid makes good. We already know Raleek Brown committed to Oklahoma. He's down at Mater Dei now, but out of Edison. And Coach didn't mention a couple of his guys committed to Jazon Jack. He's at Fresno State, and then I know Nick Murray is going to UC San Diego, or University of San Diego, I believe. So there's a lot of good stuff happening in the area. I mean, we got phenomenal athletes here, and that's you and I started this to promote that, and it's not just football. It just happens to be kind of a priority at this point because that's the first big sport that's going off. So
sure, yeah. Hey, and thanks for sharing your insights on Lyndon High School football season moving forward, and special thanks to Coach Tony Franks and the St. Mary's Rams for sharing.
Yes, thoughts. Sir. We appreciate it, and again, we have Jake Peters producing this. Jake's done a phenomenal job. For Scott and I, we like to talk about stuff, but we really don't know how to get it done in the back end of all of this, and he has been phenomenal with the production of it, and he pieced this interview together off of something that had nothing to do with he's not in house doing the interview. Scott did the interview yesterday, so thanks to Jake, and thank you to all of you listening. So we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully we have some great news next week. I know we'll be jumping off. First games are off next week, so we have actually St. Mary's starts off next Saturday, and I know there's some games next Friday night, so awesome. We'll have some things to talk about. We'll get a better idea on that schedule, and we'll highlight those games that are coming. So have a great week, everybody. Thank you.